Go ahead and pull the microphone a little closer if you don't mind. You can just slide. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'll try to move it around. I'm anti. I don't like to sit in one spot, so
that's fine. Just you'll hear the Doppler, so just kind of stay on the mic.
Yep.
So let's get this thing going here. Quick question: as a convenience store owner that sells gas, explain to me why you drove an hour to stop at Quick Trip.
Well, the downside is I don't have any convenience stores heading my direction or up here heading north. Both of mine are down south. So, as someone who is very good at taking other people's ideas and implementing into his own businesses, Quick Trip kind of sets the standard. Obviously, hence why they're so successful and why they have so many. We like to go in there and see what they're doing every once in a while. So any opportunity I get to come up north, and I'll stop at, sometimes Love's. I'm close to a Love's. Or
do you ever take a stopwatch into a Quick Trip and just really time how fast they turn people over? So
I do not, but I know it's quick. And so we've instilled a lot of those same principles into our business model, right? So our, how something as simple as checking out with credit cards, debit cards, whatever. Yeah. So we run everything under credit. Cost us a little bit more on the back end.
It's faster though.
But it's faster. We don't have to worry about people selecting their PIN numbers.
That might be one of my largest pet peeves in the world. And I have a lot of pet peeves. Left lane drivers being number one.
Yeah.
Number two is when I do check out, and I like to use my Visa debit, but I don't ever want to put my PIN in.
Absolutely.
And it turns me off. In fact, I have a little running tally in the back of my head. It's really pathetic. I know which little stores / convenient.
Yep.
I don't go there.
Exactly. and it makes a difference. So you got to think we compete with fast food, right? So people don't want to get out of their car. However, sometimes fast food is backed up and they're jammed. If you can get them out of their car and get them in and out faster than they would have been in a fast food restaurant, McDonald's, Burger King, whatever, then you can continue to gain that business. Plus, they have more options for us. We have every drink that you possibly want. We have we focus on variety, similar to Quick Trip, and food.
But do you like? Well, let me just ask a point blank question: how healthy is the food?
Oh, it's not. That's not our demographic. We do sell salads. We sell we actually do have deli. So
is it iceberg lettuce? Because technically that's water.
Here's the deal. We don't. We do romaine. We do green leaf. That's right.
So you do have nutritional value in that romaine leaf.
That's right.
With 700 calorie ranch.
Yeah. So we definitely don't go hold back on the ranch. It's we used to get. I'm not a ranch guy, so what's the main brand?
Hellman's or Hidden Valley.
We used to get Hidden Valley.
Hellman's is mayo.
Yeah, right. And then we switched to Kraft for cost purposes, and then due to more cost purposes, because we don't charge for it, we now have some off-brand.
Is it just called Ranch?
It might be. I don't know.
It comes in a 5-gallon bucket.
No, we have the packages. We don't want to sell our customers short. We let them get what they want, and we don't charge for it. So it's kind of our thing of we got to cut costs where we can, and we don't make a whole lot of food or money off food like you would think. So that's not our business model. Our business model is to get people in and out. We serve off volume, and we live within our means.
So in spirit of the show, because obviously I like to tie everything back at some point to a pop politico narrative. You're a convenience store owner. You have 2 of them. You sell fuel, food, beverages. I'm assuming scratchers. Mm-hmm. Is that universally expected?
Of course.
You can't get a convenience store license if you don't sell Lotto.
Essentially, it's just the way the land.
So let's just break it into those 4 simple categories: food, beverage, Lotto, and gas. Where do you make your money?
So I would say beverage is probably the number one area. Lottery, you make very little money on.
Is it fountain or bottle?
It used to be fountain. Over the years, it's kind of switched to bottle. So unfortunately,
is it because it's now like $4 for an Aquafina, like a 24 ounce?
To an extent, yeah. But obviously, keep in mind our cost has went up as well.
Oh yeah.
So me particularly, my margins have been the same since I've been in business. But as our cost goes up, obviously we increase our retail. So
it's called pass through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and as much as we would love to continue to sell that Aquafina at 99 cents, we just can't. But we live in a lower income area, so we also provide those options.
So just to kind of put a pin in the map for those that are listening, you've already read your dashboard. His name is Bryant Thomas Wolfin, which sounds like a Brat Pack kid. Were you really like a 80s actor in your previous life? Because you're not that old.
I am not. No, I'm a 90s kid, although I have been frequently, and I don't see it, nor does my wife, but called Justin Timberlake. So I guess you could throw me in that. I know it's not really a brat. Yeah,
right.
You could throw me in there.
Have you ever seen The Outsiders?
I've not.
You should. When you watch it, you should text me and let me know which character you think that you best fit. Bryant Thomas Wolfin is Ponyboy, or who? You should check it out. It's good. It's a Brat Pack movie. It's all the winners. It's Tom Cruise and Emilio Estevez and oh my God, I'm drawing blanks. There's like 7 of them in there.
I know what movie you're talking about. I have not seen it.
Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, Ralph. That's right.
Karate Kid, pre-Karate Kid.
I'll give it a watch.
You're married. You have 3 kids.
Yes.
How old are the kids?
10, 8, gonna be 8 this month, and then 4. But we have a 4th one on the way.
Oh my God,
it's crazy.
So you need another convenience store.
Well,
you only have two per 3 kids, so technically you're going to be 2 behind.
Yes, we used to have 3. We leased one, got purchased, or lease was bought out, and we were sent our other way. So yes, we unfortunately have not been able to keep up with our kids on the convenience store side of things.
Do they get well? If you stick at 2, you're gonna have to divide them equally, man. I'm just forewarning you. That whole even Steven thing. Do you believe? Well, let me ask you this. This is a funny thing. We were talking the other day. Are all kids equal, and do you love them all equally, or are you true to yourself and honest, and you have a favorite? And if so, which one is your favorite?
Wow, way to put me on the spot. So I've watched enough Bluey to understand where I need to go with this. No, obviously I love them all equally. They all have their quirks, and they're all my best friends.
Well, they're too young. I mean, they're not. They can be pains, but they're not shitheads yet.
Right.
That'll come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the 10-year-old is getting there. She's getting emotional on us.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a boy-girl ratio?
Girl, boy, girl. And then the new one coming is girl. So we're going to be 3 girls, 1 boy in.
So your boy's going to be badass.
I hope.
He's going to have a lot of, quote, friends.
I'm sure he will. and we're very blessed and lucky that our girls have taken the looks of their mother. And with that, I'm sure will come some teenage issues as we get going. So
BMW Convenience is your store names. Which I had a question about that because I was thinking, like, Perry County is rural Missouri. Mm-hmm. I think you have a population of just over 18,000, something like that. So basically, you're a medium-sized state school. BMW just seems a little bougie for Perry County. Why not Bronco Convenience? Or Impala.
That would
Impala Palace. That has a ring to it, man.
That would fit the mold. I mean, look, we could always open up a new LLC and change names, but
do I get points on that if it's Impala Palace?
I'll make sure to give you credit if we decide to change and go that route.
You'll be hearing from my attorneys.
Yeah, that sounds.
This is recorded.
Yeah, of course. No, we're actually from St. John County, although it basically tied sister counties with Perry County. I mean, we're very similar in population. One central city hub, the rest is all rural. In regards to the BMW Convenience, though, actually my district, and I know we'll probably get into that in a little bit, is Perry County and St. John County.
Right.
But, the thing about us in BMW Convenience, so that will stand for Bryant and Megan Wolfin Convenience, of course. And so when I was coming up with this name, I had a few different, I think I wrote down like 4 or 5. And BMW just kind of stuck because BMW has a ring to it, obviously, because of the car brand. So far we haven't had any issues with them coming after me for any kind of IP stuff.
Oh, after this, they're coming.
Let's.
You heard what happened to Mission Taco, right?
I did not.
No, Mission Tortillas. Obviously a global brand to a degree. Came after Mission Tacos here in St. Louis.
Oh dear, I didn't know that.
And now they're Session Tacos.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll have to cross that bridge when the time comes. I mean, we did self-brand too, by the way. Sure. So we used to be branded golf. so under Gulf Oil's brand. And, something a lot of people don't understand is most of those companies now are not necessarily oil companies. They're more credit card networks. And so obviously, you try to make money where you can. As we previously discussed, margins aren't super great in most of our areas. So changing networks was kind of our goal, and we had to self-brand with that. So now all of our stuff is branded BMW Convenience, plain as can be.
So Bryant is German for Bavarian. Got it.
That's right. Well, hey,
maybe
I'm
not.
proud of the heritage. We can go with that. We'll go with that.
So obviously cash flow in these businesses is critical for you, and in regards to those 4 pillars of the business, fuel. Give me 2 seconds of kind of your take, because your margin is your margin.
Yeah.
So let's say on fuel, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 6% margin per gallon or whatever it is.
So typically by gas, we go by cents, by pennies, and it just makes it a little bit easier. Roughly 6 to 7%, I would say on average, is probably where we are at.
So would you say then $3.50 gallon is better than $2.50 gallon for the business?
Absolutely not. No.
I know what you're going to say.
We want 99 cent.
So they can spend all the money inside.
Bingo. Yeah. But to an extent, this has changed a little bit over the years. So I've been in business since 2018, but managing convenience stores since 2010-ish. And, the old saying, like, you don't make any money on gas used to be true. We were usually negative. It was all about the market, get people in the stores, right? But that has changed really since I've been in business. Even when I started in 2016, we were making 8 to 10 cents a gallon. We thought that was insane. Like, that was fantastic. My business model still operates on that, so we're really aggressive on gas, especially like in our Fredericktown market where we compete with Murphy USA. They're aggressive, but in some areas, like your more rural towns, I mean, look, some of these companies are making 40, 50 cents a gallon.
Yep.
St. Genevieve, we don't have a store there, unfortunately, yet. Hopefully one of these days we'll get one. It's dominated by Casey's and Rhodes, which is kind of like, they're a Cape Girardeau corporation. They own like 30-something stores. And then there's an independent in there as well. And they all constantly are making 35 to 50 cents a gallon, and they're making very good margin. For fuel, that's great. We as long as we stay within like our 5 to 15 cent margin, we're pretty comfortable, and we'll get pretty aggressive to get the people in the door that way.
Do you ever get in the weeds? Because it sounds as if obviously you're a business owner. Numbers matter. At the end of the day, it's the bottom line. It's either green, maybe a shade of black, or it's red, right? With fuel in particular, and obviously the national debate surrounding it, when you look at the true suppliers, your finished product, your BPs, et cetera, Marathon, all the finished product fuel that goes into those tanks that you then turn around and sell. When you zoom out and you look at the statistical reality, the economic reality of the share value of these companies, of the dividend ratios, of the profits, I think the combined profit of the top 4 is roughly over the past 18 months is $78 billion in green. Dividends are 2 to 3x what they were, even at a 225 gallon average rate. Does that ever create pause or concern or maybe irritation as a B2C entity, that being, you're selling the gas. The average American that's filling up, they're not looking at the numbers I'm looking at, the EPS and everything else on these companies. What does that make you think? What does that make you feel when given the economy, they're killing it to a level that the world's never seen?
Right. Well, I think obviously the irritation is always there because our margins are not that great. Convenience stores, I mean, you can make a lot of money in our industry, but I would say your average independent for sure does not. And that's why these different corporations like Quick Trip and Casey's, they have so many.
Yeah.
And they're usually in higher volume areas, but more in I'll kind of speak from my personal experience in the more rural areas where volume is generally lower. It's extremely hard to make a decent living on 1 or 2 stores. Now, we do okay, but we live very modestly, right? Of course, that also has to do with our business model. Our goal right now being, as young as we are, is to build the brand. Build the brand, and the profit can come later. And right now we just make enough to get by with we reinvest, right? So we continue to build that that brand. In regards to your question, I mean, yeah, it's frustrating to see, but at the same time, I mean, hey, that's business, baby. That's what we have to do. If it wasn't for these corporations, providing us the opportunity to sell what we need to sell, then I wouldn't be here today. So and it kind of goes hand in hand. I would say, like I said earlier, most of these companies now are credit card networks. That's where they make a lot of their money, not necessarily in oil.
So along those lines, then, I mean, let's stay in this political eco world. Then, I know there's a number of hearings that are occurring currently. In fact, I believe good old Joshy boy is involved in these credit card companies in particular, and then they sub out the financing to these these macro distributors like fuel, et cetera. It appears that he's attempting to at least dissect the reality of the fees, and the end result appears to be trying to create a cap, right, on interest rates, on fees, on late fees, et cetera. I know you are a freedom first kind of a politician, and we'll get into that later. But what you just said is, if it weren't for these businesses doing what they do, we wouldn't have the opportunity to open our own businesses. But in the same vein, we are also talking about a political landscape, a social landscape in which cost of living is number one. You can take everything else that was macro and micro debated during the election season. It comes down to dollars. How do you true that up? How do you, as an elected official that understands it's really about the credit card fees and it's really about their earnings per share as it pertains to benefiting your constituents? True that up for me.
Yeah, well, I think we always look at the question wrong. So the question isn't how much profit these corporations are making. In my eyes, of course, as a freedom lover, I think that the question is, why do us as a people not take more personal responsibility for making poor decisions? These companies are going to try to make as much money as they possibly can.
Well, let me push, but we'll have a friendly ping pong here.
Okay.
Should they receive a dime in government subsidy to run their business?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, but you know that they do.
Oh, of course.
To the tune of hundreds of billions.
And I was going to get there, yes. So that's where this goes hand in, this is where the issue lies. Is government continues to provide subsidies to corporate welfare, obviously is what I always call it, to a lot of these corporations, and then in turn try to regulate them to death at the same time. To whereas me, like my perfect world, Bryant's utopia, which would not be a utopia, would be just to get the government out of it in general and let the free market ride. So,
but there's a load of landmines along that potential path.
Sure.
Number one is probably the simplest problem as I see it is basic education. Most people don't understand economics.
Yeah.
They really don't understand
Correct.
why that price of that gallon of gas is what it is. And I always think in terms of this argument of the basket of goods and everybody complaining about eggs and everything else, and they want to point the finger to government on the cost. To a degree, just as I kind of pointed out with the oil gas companies, I should say. If you really want to, you can pick any item that you buy that's in that basket, be it a pound of bacon or an Aquafina. You take any product and you dissect that product into, okay, who owns it, who distributes it, who's making money, what does their bottom line look like, what do their profits look like? Is their margins exceeding inflation? Are they, because you can look at price charts and you can see as inflation drops, probably 90% of these companies, you will still see a northern trajectory on their pricing charts.
Sure.
Because they don't really have incentive to drop it because they've already convinced and taught the public this is how much this costs.
Right.
So where is actual consumer constituent education or understanding? Why is that let off the hook in exchange for, well, let's blame the system / government for inflation and pricing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think I don't really have an answer to that per se, but what I can speak to is that, and you probably know this as a business owner, generally your retail price is going to adjust a lot quicker as your cost goes up compared to the adjustment of your retail price going down, right? Because you've conditioned your customers to spend a certain amount of money on, and they think like this water has this value. However, over time, as costs continue to go down and, competition is allowed to flourish, then those retail prices are going to drop as well. So for instance, since Aquafina did get so high, we've done something we've never done before, and we started putting in, now this is Pure Life, but we have a third party brand that's a generic purified water to compete with Aquafina, and we sell a ton of them. They're 69 cents now a bottle.
Have you looked into the generic brand as far as like, because at the end of the day, when we see a white label product, the vast majority of the time, it's a white label product that's coming underneath the PepsiCo or other.
Yeah, so this one in particular that I'm talking to is probably not, but I get your point. But either way, as long as the consumer benefits, I think that's where our mindset needs to be, is what benefits the consumer the best, or the most, excuse me. And, these big corporations, they're going to find ways to win. They have more resources, whether that's, in the white collar side of things, whether that's in their labor side of things, they can pay more. Like they have a market advantage. They're going to find ways to win. But, a lot of these third-party brands came in as independents and then got bought out and then by these big corporations and then made good money doing so, but then also benefited, the consumers in general. So there's the market isn't an overnight thing.
Don't you believe, though, to a degree, there's a proverbial tug of war that within a true free market economy and within a true free will community, that those two things, by definition, are on opposing sides of the value prop. Meaning, for-profit companies, they have one job, specifically publicly traded companies. Their job is not to make things cheaper. Their job is to increase shareholder value. And on the other side of the fence, which is the vast majority of actual humans that have to have bottled water or food or gas or whatever, their number one goal is to see expenses drop as fast as possible. So how do you, I'm going to use this term again, how do you true that up morally, ethically, as a representative of these people because the idea that just opening things up and competition will drive prices down, we've attempted that for 250 years, and we're not there yet. The greatest economy in the world has yet to see that truly spread equitably across multiple demographics.
Well, I would consider what we have now is not a free market. I mean, we're so heavily regulated. You want to bring back. We're so heavily regulated. I want to take us back to the credit card companies, for instance. In the specific Josh Hawley clip that you're probably seen the same thing that I seen. He refers to Visa and MasterCard having 80% cap on them, or basically 80% of the market. I forget if I don't know if that was in credit card loans or if that was just 80% in.
I think it was transactions.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what it was, but either way, it's such a heavily regulated industry that mom and pop down the street can't get involved, essentially. So how is yes, they have 80% of the market, but that's because the government has gotten in the way of this industry to prevent, which by the way has typically been lobbied by MasterCard and Visa, I'm sure, to an extent. So like all these senators and Congress people can make their clips and post online, but in reality, these same corporations are the ones donating to their campaigns in the first place.
Let me give you a true today. Literally, the news broke yesterday. It was a Federal Trade Commission court denied the merger of Kroger and Albertsons, and the reason was that they claimed that it would be anti-competitive for two of the largest, if not the largest, kind of grocers to merge, therefore eliminating competition. But yet, their argument was, if you don't allow us to do this, how are we supposed to compete with the largest
Walmart,
and Amazon coming down the pipe?
Absolutely.
And the courts, in their quote infinite wisdom, said no, those are multi-use verticals, meaning they sell so many other products you can't call them supermarkets. You two are exclusively supermarkets. You're in your own category. Go pound sand.
Yeah, it's wrong.
So So that's counter to what, but that's like completely opposite of what you're kind of laying out from a standpoint of the government creating so many regulations and not getting involved. In this case, they said no, you can't merge. Let's keep competition.
I'm telling to keep them from merging is wrong. So they should be allowed to merge to be able to compete. And so obviously Walmart has.
But wait a second though. If we do that, how is that different? Let's talk about credit card companies and grocery chains. What you're saying on the credit card side is that they're so big, they're so insulated that small competition can't come in. Yet the reality is the barrier to entry is really economics. Most smaller companies could never compete with the scale and the cost to actually get up and running. And on the grocery side, you're saying the exact opposite.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not advocating for what Kroger is saying is true. I don't see why they can't compete with Walmart without merging. With who was it? You said Albertson or
Kroger Albertson?
Yeah. So what I'm agreeing with is that I don't think that the government should interfere in that exchange. So where I would disagree is the cool thing about the grocery store industry in general is any mom and pop can really open one. It's like you said, the barrier to entry is far lower, even though it is still heavily regulated depending on your different categories and what you can carry. But most of that is on the other side of it. To what I'm getting at is, I don't trust a bureaucrat to be able to judge what a company can and can't do for the sake of the good of the people.
Do you trust private industry that is publicly traded and beholden to a board?
I do.
Shareholders,
and it's not that I trust. It's not that I trust that they have the consumer's best interest. It's that I trust that the invisible hand will lead to what has the consumer's best interest at heart. So even if you continue to have these mergers that end up becoming what's close to a monopoly. If the government stays out of the way, I would argue there probably would not be one ever, but it could happen in theory. So in theory, even if a close to monopoly happens, eventually there's going to be someone that's going to come in.
SpaceX?
Like SpaceX. I mean, hey, look, you got to see what they've done there. And then obviously, they've been real reliant on contracts with the government, and that's always the argument there. But the reality is, there's always, if the government stays out of the way and the entry level is, the barrier to entry is not, what's the word I'm looking for here? Basically where the government stays out of people's way, in theory, eventually somebody's going to come along and do what's best for the consumer. Because yes, you were right.
Give me. Well, I tell you what. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to look for those examples of whenever the government's completely stayed out of the way and industry has gotten it right.
Sure.
For the greater good. That's the caveat. Because if we're talking about benefits, we can't talk about share value. We have to talk about consumer value. Fair enough?
Yeah.
All right, quick break.
Yep. You don't get to have these philosophical conversations in the regular political realm.
That's why I have the show.
And that's why these podcasts are so important. Of course, most politicians try to stay away from them. But when you actually be able to get into the weeds, I'm probably not a good spokesperson for Austrian economics, not necessarily because I don't believe in them. It's just because I haven't had these conversations enough to be able to promote them the way someone else could.
All right, let's do this here. All right, we're back. Quick break. We were talking about when the government gets out of the way, industry. Your premise, your theory is that you believe that if government's out of the way, businesses will get it right. Okay, so let's try and whittle that down a little bit so that we can at least create a threshold or a benchmark, so to speak, as to an example of where government's completely out of the way and industry's gotten it right, and the industry has thrived and the consumer has thrived, and it was a win-win-win, right?
Sure.
What do you got?
Well, I mean, offhand, in the little 5-minute break we had here, I didn't have a chance to look up any specifics. But I mean, I'm sure there is, right? So I mean, the theory is there, and this is the problem with theory, especially economic theory in general, is proving these. With me just sitting here in front of you, I don't have those specifics, just being honest. But I mean, I can try to give you specific, like from me, which isn't, a big corporation. And so like, you could argue that I have my community at heart.
Well,
let
me bail you out a little bit. And
I want to, if I could just finish my example real quick.
Go ahead.
So we took over our store in St. Mary, Missouri, in 2022. The store was on the verge of bankruptcy, and we got a pretty good deal on it because of that. And we were able to kind of sneak in there and make a good deal with those. Those owners benefited. They didn't have to get foreclosed on or file for bankruptcy or anything. We come in, we're going to try to benefit because, we're there to try to make a profit. And then the community also benefits because this company was on the verge of closing down. They already were running out of gas every other day. They didn't have any product in the store. So the community was kind of hurting there because they had to go other places. So we come in.
Well, what was the fundamental reason it was failing? I mean, in hindsight, was it owners taking too much equity out? Was it pricing? Was it overhead, labor? Because there's always something.
Ignorance of the industry. So this was their first company, and I don't want to throw them under the bus. They were also immigrants, and COVID happened, and they bought the store in I think the late 2019. Obviously, COVID 2020, and then they were stuck in Puerto Rico. So like trying to run your first company that you've never ran before.
Yeah, that's a big asterisk.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't want to throw them and sell them short, but we just got very lucky. But anyway, so we come in. And, our goal there is obviously to make money. We come in, we don't buy a store to be a nonprofit. We come in there to make a living. We come in, we're trying to build that brand as well as I established earlier. So the number one way to do that, get customers in, show them what we got. We get super aggressive on all pricing, lowering the cost. We're 25 cents cheaper on fuel in some instances compared to our direct competitors, which, are about 10 minutes away, both sides of us, north and south. But we drove up, and of course we invested a lot of money into that store as well, painted it, rebranded, brought in new kitchen equipment, yada, yada. Pay staff a little bit better. And anyways, customers just started flowing in. And the amount of compliments that we would get on the cleanliness of the store and how aggressive we were on gas and, how much money we were able to save people just by being 25 cents cheaper on gas was pretty substantial. So, if Rhodes would have came in or one of these other bigger corps would have came in, it's possible that the store would have continued to not flourish because they did not really see their consumers in the light that we did.
Where does government rule come into play in that transition as far as to the premise that when government gets out of the way, businesses do right? Because it sounds to me like what you did, which is smart. I mean, it's business 101. You bought the business. You were a dealer. Hey, I'm going to give you a taste. I'm going to get you in. I'm going to give you a taste. You're going to love it. And then I'm going to move my prices back up to normal, and you're going to be hooked, and I got you.
Sure. Of course, we haven't done that yet, and I don't intend on doing that. But, where if you want to take for the sake of the argument, say some bureaucrat in the whatever department of whatever wanted to come in and be like, well, this community really needs someone like Rhodes to come in because they're a bigger corporation and they can sink more money up front, and we think they would be better for the community. So we're going to give them the opportunity to come here instead of you. Then all of a sudden, these citizens in St. Mary, which is a very low income area, are going to be paying 25 cents more for gas. They're going to be paying 20 cents more per 20 ounce.
But in fairness, that didn't happen.
Well, no, it didn't. But you said provide you an example, so that's what
No. That's a hypothetical. The example would be something that's actually
sure. And as I said, I don't have any specifics off the top of my head.
And to be clear, I'm not a fan of excessive regulation either. I mean, obviously, you know a little bit of my background, right? Buying buildings, renovating, construction, development here in the city of St. Louis. I mean, it's real simple. To get anything done, there's about 32 people that you have to roll through. And it's not actually 32 people. It feels like 700 people.
Absolutely.
But there's a process. And I think that can be streamlined. I think all government could be streamlined. But I also look at some point, the greater good is not tended to by the private market. It just simply isn't. And as someone that came from the finance world as well, and I love markets, I'm in the market. The devil's in the detail. I mean, you for example, Boeing recently. I'm not. No point in hiding this. I bought Boeing because they exited a union strike. They exited their the blown off door investigations and everything else. This is a 52-week low. And you have an administration coming in that is, while they say they're not hawkish, they will absolutely fund the military-industrial complex, which includes Boeing.
Yep.
So pick it up at $150 a share. As of today, it's $174, right? And pure far left-wing progressives would be, oh, that's blood money. Well, to a degree, I've got 3 boys. I'm paying bills. So here's where I'm going with this. I think it's one thing to say that government's too big, that government is inefficient, and government should be improved. It's a whole other thing to say that it doesn't work. Because we could argue that if you look at macro institutions in America from a governmental standpoint compared to their private industry counterparts, is there a better army in the world than our government ran and funded army? Air Force, Marines, right? Is there a better healthcare system, frankly, than Medicare? Has the lowest cost, highest results, access, et cetera, than obviously what's going on with United Healthcare and others. There's examples where it works. And I think a big part of it is scale and motive. Because at the end of the day, when we do have consolidation, I don't care what the industry is, when profit motive wins, consumers might win. It's a big question mark. But to blanket say that government should just go away or get out of the way, that's not realistic.
Well, I think you're a couple things on your argument for the military and Medicare. When you have an unlimited pool of the amount of money that you can sink into something like that, you're bound to be successful.
Well, I understand that, but what's the value of national security and people's lives?
Well, and you could argue that as someone who is a fan of national security, you could argue that is somewhere that we need to sink all this money into. But if you take the side of argument of like healthcare, for instance, who's to say that is maybe that has the best results? But who's to say that a private organization with the same amount of funding could not provide those same results, if not better?
History has said that.
The same amount of funding that
if you take the market value of the 3 largest healthcare network providers in the country, insurance providers, they are larger than Medicare, and they are not getting results that Medicare gets.
I mean, think of the hoops that they're having to jump through. That I would assume that these Medicare. I mean, they're all these providers are. Why are we getting to the point to where a lot of these providers are not wanting to accept Medicare, or they're pushing out Medicare
profit?
Exactly, because the money is not there.
No. That's not why. Because United Healthcare, UHG, United Healthcare Group. They have one customer. That's a shareholder. It's not a hidden secret. If they were to start to increase coverage, increase services, decrease costs, the first thing that is going to affect is margin and profitability and dividends. And then the board is going to be pissed. That's the simple domino effect of the quid pro quo between healthcare and share value. So at some point, it doesn't work if we value human life, because that's really what it comes down to. It's healthcare. All of us have had family members or know people that have been seemingly healthy, right? Non-smokers, maybe exercise a little bit, and all of a sudden they have cancer. They didn't choose that. That's not a life choice. But now they have a $10,000 high deductible plan, and oh, by the way, chemo is pretty fucking expensive.
Yeah, but it used to not be that way, correct?
No, what,
Back in the day, before government got so involved into the healthcare side of things, things were roughly affordable. Of course, I mean you're comparing I'm comparing apples and oranges because the times were so much different. But if you look at the reason the market has been driven up so substantially over the last 20, 30 years is because of how increasingly the government has continued to get into the market, and so people. I'm sure you did before, but we'll take our employees, for instance, on a whim, they will just show up with a doctor's note in hand. Hey, sick today, can't come in. Look fine as can be. They essentially are going in.
Do you provide health care?
We do not. We do not.
Okay.
So, but and I'm not complaining. At least they went to the doctor and get it. But what I'm getting at is, there's supply and demand. That's typically what will drive a majority of your pricing. And if your demand is extremely high, well, then of course you're going to try to.
Well, that's not necessarily true, and here's why: because whenever somebody gets sick or hurt or injured or they have treatments that they need, they are at the mercy of their network. Which means, you fall down. Let's say you have a kid, right? They fall down, they break their arm. It's clear it's broke. It's a 90-degree, bone at this point. The system will many times force okay, in order for you to get the referral or to go get this fixed, you got to go through your primary. You got to go through your pediatrician. Well, the pediatrician doesn't set bones, and it doesn't take a rocket science to see that the bone is sticking out of the skin. It needs to go get fixed. So the system is structured. The private system is structured that there's a path.
Yeah, but who structures that?
The private, because we don't have single payer. No. Because we don't have single payer healthcare. We don't have universal health. These are all private networks.
Because of the way that the government is structured, the healthcare, and I'm not going to say you're to be an expert, by the way, but so you have different specialists in different regions. If my wife who's pregnant wants to see a specialist, we use a midwife. My midwife can't recommend us to go see a specialist. We have to go to a physician to be able to recommend.
But that's not government mandate. That's insurance mandate.
Sure. I mean, to an extent, yes.
I mean, if we're going to have this conversation openly and fairly, it's not. Maybe it is a private mandate. The insurance companies are the gatekeepers. The private industry, in order to make more profit, has added a layer, specifically insurance companies, that are the middlemen that take all of the cash flow between the consumer who is in need and the healthcare provider. Why don't we get rid of insurance companies?
Actually, I would completely agree with that to an extent. I would argue that if we would open up the market when it comes to healthcare providers in general, and deregulate the healthcare industry on that side of things to where they can make it cheap enough and make enough money on the side of foregoing the insurance company. So I don't have insurance, and obviously most of these hospitals, I don't know about up north, but at least down south, most of these hospitals provide a cash rate for those who come in and pay cash. It is typically half of what someone is for insurance. And why is that? Because they're increasing their profitability to have to run through.
Yeah, but if you've got
insurance,
if you got a city rated $8,000 broken arm in Perry County, where your median income per person is $31,000, a $4,000 bill for a broken arm, they're not sitting on that. That's not in savings. They are immediately going to go to a payment plan.
And that is true. But, my question, I guess, for that would be, why has things in the healthcare industry continuously gotten more expensive?
Margins.
So my son, who has broke his arm about 3 years ago at this point, it ended up costing us about $15,000 total. Mm-hmm. Some of these hospitals, unfortunately, did not have a cash plan. Unfortunately, that we had to run through when he got his arm set for pretty much no good reason, but I digress. I won't go there. And where I'm getting at with this is, if a broken arm was $5,000 25 years ago, of course, inflation has probably been a lot of that. Margins to an extent would be another portion of that. Why is that not getting cheaper? Everything on the technology side of things.
Liability. I can give you a number of reasons. Number one, profit motive. They're private. They're publicly traded companies. Number two would be liability.
Yeah, but
insurance
would you
rates.
argue that the demand has skyrocketed?
No, I would
Yeah,
say
absolutely.
How do you figure?
Healthcare demand. There are more people that go to the hospital today. Once again, don't have the statistics in front of me that go and get treatment for anything across the board than they ever have before.
Oh, okay, you know what? I will acquiesce to that. I will agree, and I think it's largely because of a number of other factors. Obesity, right?
Well, that's yeah.
We have an unhealthy community, and we have individuals that their diet consists of shit, and then they're overweight, diabetic, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they're overweight and they attempt to walk upstairs, they fall and they break their arm. Right? That's a simplistic anecdote that we all know is real. So we have this societal expansion of shitty lifestyles, but the root cause is, you really got to look at why.
So I want to hit on this real quick because, we continue to do this, but nothing is changing on our lifestyle. Why is that? Because most of the time your government is supplementing and bailing out these folks that may get into a pinch or may not reap the consequences of their actions. And
so okay, I agree. And, in anticipation, I made sure to pull up some stats here. And this is not a gotcha. The reason I reached out to have you on this show is because I know that we are on opposite ends of the policy spectrum, but we can have this conversation. So when you talk about results, when you talk about government getting involved or subsidies as it pertains to health care, life expectancy by state. If we go through the states with the highest life expectancy, they live the longest. I'm going to read them quickly. California, Hawaii, New York, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Connecticut, New Jersey, Colorado, Washington, Vermont. To be clear, all 10 are what we would consider blue states.
of course.
And we run down, the deal, bottom. Ohio, South Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, West Virginia, Mississippi. Of those 10, 9 are supermajority Republican and have been for over 40 years. Okay? So when I point that out, when we talk about the role of government and healthcare and results, because really the simplest metric isn't, and we can talk about numbers and money and income and house value and education, all those other things, which will also lean blue in the top 10. But when it comes to healthcare, it really comes down to how long do you live? Do you live longer? If you're dying earlier, you're not as healthy for a multitude of reasons. Why do you think there's such a discrepancy, a measurable difference between states that have way more government intervention as it pertains to trying to expand Medicare, expand Medicaid, provide more healthcare services to try and get costs down, largely due to ACA, Obamacare, and the states that are lagging are the ones that have been fighting the expansion of government services. How do you true that up?
Well, I think the argument there is obviously they're sinking way more money into their healthcare systems than we do here. That's no doubt. I'm not saying that it doesn't produce results, but at what cost? The cost is, yes, you're increasing life expectancy,
how much
but you are also stealing from your taxpayers to be able to provide from that. So, including like us Missourians to an extent, are paying for Californians to live longer.
Whoa. That's demonstrably not true. I'm an econ guy, and I can pull it up. Missouri is not a net exporter of taxes. It is an importer of federal taxes.
Sure, but I get what you're saying. Disagree to an extent. I mean, I don't disagree that we do obviously import more percentage-wise, specifically with our budget.
Statistically, and we are
that.
one of 12 states. The other 11 are also Republican majority states that denied or declined expansion of federal funds for Medicare expansion.
Yeah, but then but we have still expanded that to this day, correct?
No.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. The people of Missouri voted to expand.
Yes.
The Missouri House and Senate didn't. They did not. They denied the will of the people 6 years ago when the ballot initiative was on the table.
Yes.
To
it
expand.
Went through, correct.
And loophole after loophole and little legalese, the Missouri state government Republican majority, said, nah, we really don't believe you guys know what you want. We're not going to do this. And they didn't do it.
I thought that went the other direction because, to this point, at over a third of our budget, I think it's about 44 to 45% of our budget now goes towards social services of some sort. And a lot of that skyrocketed after that Medicaid expansion
but to be clear,
through.
even in the state of Missouri, though, because 78% of Missouri's GDP is derived from 3 counties that are not red. The vast majority of money that is generated in the state of Missouri comes from blue to light blue, purple districts. That's just the financial reality of it.
Okay.
So those counties export income subsidies to rural red counties. And I'm trying to understand the mindset of leadership. And now you're one of those individuals. You are a leader. You're an elected leader. Let me just ask you this. We talk about at what you've said a couple times, at what cost? How much is his life worth? Is there a dollar amount? Is there a value from a taxation standpoint or a spend standpoint that you feel is a threshold or a limit to what somebody is worth from a healthcare standpoint?
I don't think you can put a number on that, which is why a government shouldn't. So, how do you you don't put a monetary value on someone's life. But the problem is government will typically pick winners and losers to be able to choose whose life is more valuable.
But whenever I go through,
unfortunately, statistics, so it's almost like an AI standpoint.
But when I go through the list of states that do have the highest life expectancy, that live the longest, it's not as if there's subcategories there where it's like, well, Democrats live longer in California than Republicans do, because that's probably demonstrably not true. It's not as if government is choosing a demo per se. It's just saying life in those states is more valuable, and as such, the investment that they've put into it is resulting in people living longer. So,
I think that's multifaceted. You can't just lay down one statistic and say that's the reason why. I'm sorry, I know I'm moving on you here. And say that's the reason why people live longer is because we put more money into healthcare. I mean, there's lifestyle choices. There's this and that. I mean, there's
but we can compare this globally. I mean, of the top 30 developed nations in the world, 29 of them have some form of either universal healthcare or single-payer systems. We are the one outlier. We have the majority of our healthcare provided by private insurance. We are decelerating in services and in outcome, et cetera, whereas other nations, Scandinavian nations in particular, even Japan, et cetera, life expectancy, they're outpacing us by 5 to 7 years per person. So
once again, lifestyles are completely different in those areas for sure. Demographics are completely different in those areas. For sure.
Of course, I mean there's other
areas, and unfortunately, I would have versed up a little bit better on my healthcare side of things if I would have known this is where we were going.
No.
Certainly not my area of expertise.
I
would say that the general ignorant argument for me is. A bureaucrat or the government is never going to decide how to spend my money better than I do, right? And I know you hear that a lot, and I agree with that. And so, like, for me, why should I be punished for the sake of the greater good? And I know that seems incredibly selfish, but here's the thing, is my family, we take care of ourselves. I'm not going to say where we eat super clean and super healthy, but we do try to eat healthy as we can, constantly stocking our refrigerator with fruit, constantly having fresh local produce and fresh local cattle and chickens and just poultry and things along those lines. Like we source those locally, and we know where those items come from. Of course, we're an outlier. We're able to provide for our family that. Not everybody's like that, but when the government comes to me and takes 30, probably about 20 to 25% of my income to
probably 22%.
Roughly, to distribute it amongst others, I feel incredibly frustrated by that.
Well,
by the way, that's just income taxes,
right,
when it comes to property taxes and other things, I'm still providing.
I know, but I got to push back on the talking points, because when you say distributing to others, 22% federal that is distributed to, quote, others, those others are also predominantly, probably 65% of that 22% is your military that you believe
Absolutely.
in. Okay, so
Hey, for the record, but before you paint me with a brush here,
No.
there is not a department in the federal government, and there's not a department at the state government level that I would not cut, and that includes military.
I would agree through process. I think efficiency can be had everywhere. So we're on the same page there. See? Agreement.
Should we both get on the Doge volunteer?
I don't like the idea of the largest contractor, private contractor of the federal government that has made $4 billion a day in personal net worth since the election being anywhere close to addressing efficiencies for the sake of private industry.
You know, I could agree with that. That's actually something I've actually said already. I do think there's a specific conflict of interest there with Elon being a part of that.
Yeah, specific to the tune of $1 trillion in personal net worth if he
Right.
gets his way.
But you know what I can argue is the fact that someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, who has been preaching these since he was running for office, or like Ron Paul, who's been preaching this since he was in office.
But don't you think it's the simpler solution would be if Republicans actually carried the water pail with water in it that they claim that they believe in, pass a balanced budget amendment.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
As that, absolutely.
That's all you have to do. You do not need all these. Okay,
Hey,
let's make
let's
government.
be real honest.
Hold on. Let's make government more efficient by adding another agency with 2 leaders.
Yeah.
That's super efficient.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah, this is something we're going to concur on. And you know what's funny is there's a uniparty at the federal level. I would argue there could be a uniparty at the state level, but
Absolutely.
But at the federal level, do you really think either party wants things to change? Of course not. It's extremely lucrative to both sides to continue this fight and this arguing back and forth. You know, whether the Democrats want more money for health care and social services, and the Republicans want more money for essentially the military and education to an extent. Of course, some of that's changing, but yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Quick break, because I need to hit pause here.
Okay.
We'll be right back. We're gonna dissect this more. I got plenty of terabytes worth of storage on this thing.
Love it.
All right. I'll tell you right now, if she would have ran 12-point win minimum. Here we are post-election, and if the numbers keep coming in and the margin continues to slip, he's now officially a plurality president. There's no more 50% vote.
Right.
It's at 49.2.
Right.
Her numbers continue to go up with still the last counts. Maybe that's a nice little transition, because I'm kind of sick of healthcare too. I mean, I didn't even talk about Luigi.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah. Well, once again, that's just not something. Obviously, I would never condone any violence. It's just not something that now I'm in the state politics. Like that's where like my
yeah, we can. Well, let me just ask a quick, really simplistic question. I don't think anybody would openly and honestly say they condone violence to that extent, but can you say that you maybe understand the trade winds on why?
Could you elaborate a little bit deeper on that? So
real simple. Do you believe that the healthcare system as we have, and all of the hate and all the vitriol and all the denied claims and all the expenses, and the United States averages over 450,000 bankruptcies a year due to healthcare expenses. We just talked about life expectancies are dropping, which you can directly point to the lack of coverage and services. People are dying, right?
Yep.
So if you add that all up, is it really super surprising, or did we not see this coming at all, that there was going to be a potential rogue assassin that's going to say, you know what, the CEO is making $40 million a year denying 60% of all claims?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that's the route that it could always go. I mean, not even today's world, there's always been political violence, right? So it's just unfortunate that, it seems like the more that the bigger these industries continue to get, the more hate is obviously going to come. And they're making poor decisions, and not decisions that I would agree with.
So let me ask you then a question, tying these businesses to government, to politics. Citizens United, should it be overturned?
So once again, gonna state that I guess I may be ignorant to what you're talking about.
Political funding, private funding, unlimited funding by businesses and individuals to contribute to PACs and campaigns. Simple as that. Should, in simpler terms, do you believe money should be taken out of politics so that there's a limit on how much billionaires can buy? Because I mean, we all know the numbers. Elon spent $170 million plus his X platform.
Yeah, so the answer to that would be I do not believe money should be taken out. And it's ironic because I was essentially self-funded along with friends and family myself. So someone who hates money in the campaign side of things and political side of things. Unfortunately, the reality is it's a First Amendment right. And
but wouldn't you agree that money in politics makes government bigger?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it leads to that direction. And
therefore,
but the inherent problem with the issue is the people keep electing these people in office.
Completely agree.
That's where but I don't think we should punish trample on someone's rights because the people continue to.
But you have an uneducated.
Not wake up.
But you have an uneducated public.
Yeah,
That's from. I mean, we can go down that path.
We could, yeah.
But I don't think you really want to, because the reality is, if we look at educational statistics, and I'm not going to do this to you because I know I didn't give you any heads up on subjects, but I've got them in front of me. Blue states kick the shit out of red states when it comes to educational attainment, test scores, and outcome. And my point is, when money is in politics to the level that it is, the ability to fund campaigns that are bullshit, that are lies, both ways.
George Santos?
Yeah, exactly.
Prime example.
Take your pick. Or, I think about the state of Pennsylvania. I think the number was somewhere around $180 million was spent on anti-trans ads in the state of Pennsylvania to swing the rural vote, obviously to the Republican side. And I just want to throw this statistic out at you in regards to that in particular. We're going to go from groceries and gas and healthcare to trans. NCAA tracks its athletes, and there's watch groups that track this whole trans issue. 40 out of 500,000 NCAA athletes are acknowledged as trans and competing. On the flip side, and again, there was 180 million spent in one state. That doesn't even include the other 49 that inevitably there was anti-trans ads that were spent. So let's just double it for the sake of ha-has. $360 million was spent on trans athlete or trans ads in this campaign. After yesterday, at the time of this recording, Madison, Wisconsin had yet another school shooting. Three dead. A couple others are critical still. A second grader made the 911 phone call. There have been 83 school shootings with 38 dead and over 150 injured. And I guess I'm bringing this up because I'm just curious your take on perspective, on value props. 40 athletes, none of them won a national championship. None of them are, lifting the big trophies in any sport in NCAA. 40 competed, and we spent $360 million to, attack that demo. And yet in 2024, we've got, 38 dead kids, 2 less than the number of athletes. True that up. When you hear those statistics, what do you think? Like, how do you compare and contrast what we focus on when it comes to, say, those two subjects?
I mean, I think that's the political game in general. It's whatever the hot button topic is, and that's where the money goes. So if you want to take another example here in Missouri, for instance, the amount of money that was spent on immigration in the Republican primaries, when it very much does very little to us, or it impacts us very little, because that became the item. And so, unfortunately, political ads are specifically ran to dupe its target audience.
So you admit that the target audience, to a degree, is uneducated.
I would say it's more. I wouldn't say uneducated. I would say it's more ignorant to the.
Okay, fair enough. Uneducated implies dumb, and I won't.
And I don't want. Yeah, I don't want to say
no,
that.
and you're an elected official, and I'm not. Yeah, I'm gotcha.
No one has the time to, unless you're a political nerd, to go through the facts, or to go through, or just do the research yourself in general. So like when I'm knocking doors, right? I knock thousands upon thousands of doors, and 90% of the doors is, are you pro-life? Are you pro-Second Amendment? Are you pro-life? And as long as you were those three things, whoever knocked on that door first wins.
Pro-life, pro-gun, and pro-life.
Did I say pro-God? I meant pro-guide. I'm sorry. So pro-God, pro-gun, pro-life. So as long as you're those three things, you knocked on that door first, you pretty much won that vote. And that's kind of how the consultants will just straight up tell you. I mean, it's not a hidden secret. It's outside of those three things, a majority of people don't really care.
What does pro-God mean, though?
Just be pro-religion. Don't allow the government in your churches. Don't allow.
But what about separation of church and state? What should religion be in public schools?
Are you asking my opinion, or are you asking the general public's opinion?
So I would say based on constitutional interpretation of what our forefathers intended. Should religion be in the public space?
Well, I think in regard to education, I would argue that a lot of the founding fathers did not believe in public, or would not have believed in public education anyways, or would not think that education was a route that the government should be in.
But they also didn't envision ARs on sale for $199 at Walmart.
Yeah, did you see that Key and Peele?
No.
Okay, all right. I won't go there then. It is a funny skit.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, you should. It's pretty hilarious, actually. But anyways, I've completely lost my train of thought on that. But what I was getting at earlier with like the campaigning and the door knocking is, you're unfortunately, your average person doesn't have time to really deeply research the other issues. So they have their main items, and as long as you can hit on those main items, it doesn't matter if you and your opponent are the same on those items. They will more than likely.
But how does it make you feel, though? Let's talk just briefly guns in Missouri in particular, where you have rural state, as you said, the second most important pillar after pro-life is pro-gun, right? When campaigns get thrown out that the blue team is coming after your guns, they want to take your guns away, right? You and I both know that has not been written in any legislation. That is not a platform position by the Democratic Party or other. Moms against. Maybe there's some fringe groups that are like, yes, we want all guns gone. But let's be realistic. They are not the ones sitting at the policy table that will actually try to implement anything to do that. They can't. So when ads come out from the RNC and strategists, et cetera, to feed the fuel and to make the opponent out to be this gun grabber, when really all they're looking to do, hey, let's just expand background checks. Let's implement a couple red flag laws, because there's some violent individuals that keep beating their wives and eventually they're going to shoot them, right? The statistics prove that. That's really what the blue team is saying in general. Like, there are certain things that, let's just slow it down. We don't want to take it away. Go hunt. Kill as many deer as you want. We love the jerky. Keep bringing it to the city. We're happy. But that narrative gets completely twisted. Why?
So, I mean, first of all, before you just put all the blame on the Republican Party, the Democrat Party does the same exact thing.
No, well, I'm just...
And so there's scare tactics, and there's
I'm not giving them a pass, but what I'm saying, in a majority red state that used to be a pretty moderate bellwether. In fact, it was the bellwether for 75 years in presidential elections. Whoever Missouri voted for won, right? Well, they lost that in come Obama, right? Missouri didn't like Obama for an obvious reason. When we talk about guns in this state and we talk about the narrative, what I'm talking about is this just extreme fear, this ideological fear that they're coming after everything. They're coming after my 9. They're coming after my 22, whatever. I don't even know. I'm not a gun owner. Why keep doubling down on that when you already have a majority?
So, first of all, or I said first of all last time, the reason I think this, and I am not a poli-sci major. I don't know I didn't get into politics to study the statistics of, how the psychology of politics and this and that. But I can tell you from my point of view, and I think it's correct in a sense, is that if you don't paint the scene as being dire, then people aren't going to care enough, and then those rights will be trampled on. So, as a Republican or as a conservative Republican, we believe that our right to defend ourselves is inherent and given to us by our Creator.
I've heard this argument before. I have a very good friend that is a Freedom Caucus friend, to be honest with you, that is always taking the position that opposed to any legislation because it's just going to lead to them all going away. But what we're really talking about is a spectrum. It's an incremental spectrum in which the Democrats. Let me back up. Moderate individuals are just looking for improvement. We are not seeing improvement as it pertains to gun violence across the board. And the per capita reality of gun violence, I will bring this one up. Let me see here. Per capita, the states with the highest gun violence per capita are, this is top 10, Mississippi, number 1, Louisiana, New Mexico, Wyoming, Alabama, Montana, Alaska, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee. Per capita, those are the states that greatest chance of gun violence occurred to you. The lowest, the safest per capita, Massachusetts, Hawaii, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, California, Minnesota, and Nebraska. When you hear that, what goes through your head?
The first thing that comes to my mind is, where is that violence being taken, being done at, right? So, like in my town, it's not happening.
Well, you have a population of 18,000 in the whole county.
Yeah, but I have 37,500 in my district, or 38,000 in my entire district, and we don't have gun violence. So to trample on someone's rights and tell them that they don't have the right to defend themselves from tyranny from their neighbor.
That's not what anybody's saying.
Well, to an extent, to what your Freedom Caucus friend said, I would agree that it will lead to the eventual. If you just look at the
vast majority of legislation, though, that's been proposed from the blue team in regards to guns is not about taking any gun away. It's about improving the process and filtering access. Background checks, mental health checks, whatever, red flag laws, et cetera, in which it's like...
Yeah, but once Democrats, again, on that side of things is then you start getting into the point of where, bureaucrats are the ones kind of deciding who can and can't get weapons, and maybe they have somebody's
FBI.
Wife who had the FBI is still bureaucrats.
The FBI is... Are you saying that the FBI is predominantly blue or red? Because when you have 20, 30, 40-year employees there, I'm pretty sure you got a pretty balanced bucket.
And it's possible, but the point doesn't change, is the fact that when you have someone deciding who can have their rights and who cannot, based off of maybe someone's ex-wife that maybe had an issue with them 5 years ago that had a little ping on the record, but all of a sudden...
I think the statistic nationally, including vast majority in red states, statistic nationally is like 72% of Americans agree that expanding background checks and other similar laws as it pertains to gun procurement is justifiable. Even in red states, you have a majority, over 50, that say, yes, these are good things. Why push back so hard on that? Because what about the will of the people?
Because you're trampling on someone's right.
Are you?
And so if the majority is in favor of stoning somebody, would you be in favor of it because the will of the people say that we should stone this person?
If you put a ballot initiative on the table and it said, do we want to implement and improve stoning, and it got over 51%, well then, you know what? I believe in democracy. I'm going to say, whether I agree with that or not, hey, Will of the people. That's how it works.
Unfortunately, I would not agree with that.
Why?
Because you can't choose to kill someone because the majority of the people believe it to be true.
But you can't choose to protect someone because the majority of people believe we should have a little bit more stringent process before somebody takes a gun and they're mad and they go shoot somebody.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
What you're saying is that we can't protect people on the flip side by simply implementing a process that it's not going to stop anybody. We're talking about a speed bump. Cars. At some point, we decided 65 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour, that should be the limit because anything above that, people typically, if they get in a wreck, they're going to die. Statistically proven, you're going to die. Seatbelts. The government said, you know what? We probably need to make this a law because every time people get in a wreck doing 55 without a seatbelt, the percentage chance of them dying is pretty high.
Yeah, but that's protectionism of someone's own decision, which we shouldn't be doing. In my opinion.
But that's not. But the thing is, like when it comes to gun legislation, asking someone to just make sure that they're not a freaking felon or a violent criminal or have a history. Because now what we're finding, specifically in the school shootings, like the one last year, what was that kid, the Colt, whatever, FBI had been to his house multiple times. But due to local legislation and local laws, protecting someone's right to have a gun, they couldn't do anything about it. And on the flip side, the kid finally does something about it, kills 12 kids. Like, at some point, who's culpable?
Yeah. So on the other side of the argument, is there not a way that we can increase the resources for defending these facilities that do not allow
So you're saying
weapons?
It makes more sense to put in metal detectors than to just ask people to fill out a background check?
Yes. I'm not willing to cave on my right to...
What does that say to kids? Kids are impressionable. Like the optics, because there's also extremists that are like, we should arm all teachers. They should all have a 9 on their hip. Like, what does that say to a kid that you're going into a space in which you're intended to learn, meet your friends, play, have recess, eat some peanut butter and jelly. But, oh, by the way, the environment that you're walking into is actually not protected.
That says our society right now is needs to change. That's what that says. So, and where are these students coming, or where are these typical student shooters coming from? They're coming through the system, this government paid for system that is, and basically
they're not. No, they're not.
They are.
School shooters predominantly are young white men that are suburban that have that are not participating in extracurricular activities that typically, have a large percentage of them are gamers, specifically violent games.
Sure.
And they're in households in which,
but they're told they're growing up in a society where they're told that they are inferior to other people to an extent, or that
by who?
By everybody. I mean, the demographic that you just listed off is obviously pinged as being the worst of the worst type of people.
No, that's not true. All I said is that they have the highest propensity of implementing and executing school shootings. I'm not saying that they're the worst. I'm not saying...
But what I'm arguing is that, that you constantly have a society that continues to throw that demographic under the bus, essentially, to an extent. And they're told about how poor and how bad of a person they are. And
they're playing Call of Duty.
Well, I mean, I play Call of Duty, and I've never had the inkling to try to shoot anybody.
And they have parents that have been unengaged.
Correct.
So let me ask you this. School shootings moving forward, this happened in Michigan, parents being charged.
Have to think about that, but open to the discussion.
I mean, because sub 18, the kid is the responsibility of...
You're exactly right. I can't I don't want to obviously give you one way or the answer without kind of thinking about that.
Yeah, but your gut reaction, I could tell by your facial expression. If you're listening, go to YouTube, you can see his facial expression. Your gut tells you, charge him.
Someone's got to be responsible, right? To an extent.
So...
But I'm not, just for the record, I mean, once again, I have not thought about this issue before. I don't want to throw the parents completely under the bus. I mean, do I think they should be charged with, first-degree manslaughter for 12 students because their child, did something poor?
Took their guns.
Probably not to that extent. But I do think there is some sort of sense of responsibility
What about
that the parent
insurance?
holds.
What about insurance on the guns?
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
If you're a gun owner,
Like an example?
if you're a gun owner and you've got a locker of guns, should you be required to carry liability insurance?
Required, no. But is it something
Are
that
you
could
required
be
to
out
carry
there?
insurance on a car?
You
I
are.
get that what you're going to say is, well, the Second Amendment's different than a car. But anything we do that presents a physical risk or liability to other humans and or ourselves.
Well, for the record, before you get too deep in the weeds on this, I would be a proponent behind not mandating insurance on someone's car. However, I think it provide once again, it's a layer of protectionism that we have against someone's poor choice.
Yeah, because
if
some
you don't
dipshit that-
if you don't have insurance and you run into somebody and you don't have insurance, well, you should reap the repercussions of your actions, and maybe go to jail or go to prison or whatever because you decided not to have insurance. Like there's checks and balances, and the way that we're doing it now, I don't know if it's necessarily the best way that we could do it. So I just wanted to, before you went too deep down that rabbit hole, I just wanted to let you know I may not be the best person to argue that point because car insurance in general, I don't know is necessarily a mandate that.
Yeah, but I mean,
need
if
to
you're
have.
driving a car and you don't have insurance because you're one of those individuals that are like, fuck the government, I'm not doing any of this, and the brakes go out, no fault of your own, and it ends up rolling.
But it's
through.
still your fault that you didn't provide the coverage.
I understand
It's a
that.
decision that you made. You should still be punished for not having that.
But how does the family that gets T-boned? How are they made whole?
I mean, there's
So just fuck them.
no. There's obviously look if you're
Because if they're going to
charged
sue the person, and the person is clearly, the majority of people that will do that are poor,
with- sure. Yep.
so they already have nothing.
Yep.
It's the proverbial you can't get blood squeeze blood out of a turnip, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they get T-boned and their minivan is totaled. What's their repercussion?
I mean, if the guy is obviously going to be probably charged with some sort of manslaughter of some sort, whether that's to a lesser degree or not.
Well, let's just say
has
it's all
own-
property. Let's just say it's all property. But this is a single mom with 2 kids and needs the car to take the kids to work, etc. And now she has no car, and there's no insurance coming her way to fill it back up.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume she would hopefully have her own insurance, but if not, then
Well, but you
that's
know
not
how
gonna take
insurance
care-
companies operate. If it's not their fault, they're going to go to the other party. That's why
potentially, but then at that point, it would be on the insurance company to try to get their money back. So, had actually a personal example of this to where we had a situation where someone essentially wrecked themselves, tried to blame us, came after us. He actually did not have insurance, but still came after us. My insurance company stepped in with defense, and then we did not have to.
Did your rates go up?
They did not.
So the guy buys gas from you?
I couldn't tell. Probably not, because it was around the Herky area, so I would assume probably not.
Hey, we're going to take another quick break, reset here. When we come back, I want to focus on Missouri for you a little bit.
Okay.
Let's get into the weeds on who we really are as a people in the state of Mo, the Show Me Mo state. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to talk about the state of Missouri. We're going to talk a little bit about the 10,000-foot view stuff that's landed on ballots, and then want to get into a little bit of some of the things that you've worked on. Let's a couple things about Missouri. It has a pretty open, pretty. I wouldn't say easy, but it has a process to put initiatives, amendments on the ballot. Basically to expand freedom, allow people to vote on it, right?
Yep.
Pick the subject, put it on a ballot, and here we go. 5 things in particular over the past 6 years have landed on big ballots. We talked a little bit earlier about Medicare, in which the people voted yes, and the legislation still hasn't. To my understanding, it has not been implemented the way that it was spelled out and voted for. But the other 4.
For the record, that's all legislation, by the way. Any loophole. But anyways, go ahead. Any
Well,
loopholes.
but this that one was a little bit more like openly stating by leadership of the party in the House,
Yeah.
we really don't think you guys understood what you were doing. That's what they did. The other 4 areas: increase in minimum wage, yes.
Twice.
Legalizing weed, yes. Sports gambling, yes. And the big one, abortion, yes. Medicare, minimum wage, gambling, weed, and abortion. 5 subjects that, when they are implemented, would scream. If I were to say, hey, I've got this town where they've got a lot of Medicare, minimum wage is really high, there's sports gambling, weed's legal, and you can get an abortion. Most people are going to be like, oh, am I going to San Francisco? And I get to say, nope, you get to go to Missouri. That's what the people of Missouri want. Help me navigate the irony, the hypocrisy.
Oh, this is simple. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Political ads, campaign ads, completely there to dupe the people, depending on what both sides do it.
But
and so let's go with the most recent at hand situation here with the abortion side of things. It was constantly pinged at that obviously Missouri beforehand was the most pro-life, had the most pro-life legislation in the United States.
But it was only because Schmidt had it scripted day one.
From Roe v. Wade, yeah. It was targeted, it was triggered.
Post-Dobbs.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't agree with this sentiment, but I think it could be argued that, Missouri possibly went too far to the right with that. I don't agree, but it could be argued that. Maybe Missouri is a little bit more moderate on this issue. I'm in a box because my area is very Catholic. We're as pro-life as it gets. My entire district was one of the reddest districts when it came to voting down this Amendment 3 abortion issue. So it's hard for me to judge what is going on up here. It's hard for me to judge what's going on in Kansas City. But if you look at the map, it's the stereotypical map of Amendment 3 being passed in St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield, Columbia, that general region as well. And then everywhere else voted no. Now, of course, it's a popular vote, so you still had to get enough of the popular vote.
Yeah, because
I want to specifically bring up
because trees don't vote.
I want to correct. I want to bring up a specific example of a personal friend of mine who called me the day of the election, who just got done voting, and he obviously voted for me. He voted big Donald Trump supporter, huge Donald Trump supporter, and then voted in favor of Amendment 3.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us would argue there's a disconnect there. Like, why are you voting in favor of Donald Trump? Why are you voting in favor of me? And then why are you voting pro-abortion? And in his exact reaction, well, I didn't ask him. He said, I just wanted the government to stay out of my bedroom. Unfortunately, that bill wasn't that simple. There was far more in that bill than just the simplicity of was it for pro-abortion or anti-abortion?
I will say that we're on the same page right now. Before you go any further, that I don't like pork. I don't like add-ons.
Right.
Proceed.
And obviously there was, because there are like transgender issues and stuff in that bill that tagged on, and so like with a lot of these initiative ballots, there's a lot of pork, and I do make sure I want to make sure we get into IP reform in general, because there's also some initiative petition reform, not intellectual property, initiative petition.
No, I know what
reform.
you're talking about.
I just wanted to make sure.
I'm a regular troll of your associate Nick Schroer. So
Nick Schroer, yeah, that's right.
I'm very familiar.
Yeah. So, but before we get into that, a lot of these initiative petitions, whether they're constitutional amendments or whether they're just propositions, there's tons of pork in them. And for me, like it's unfortunately it's a marketing ploy, because you might not have enough people on board for this item, so we need to add this item in. Let's take marijuana, for instance. Marijuana probably would not have gotten 50+% unless it had funding for schools. So that was a marketing ploy, is what it was. And, similar to this issue here. I know for sure when I was on YouTube, which I'm a frequent YouTuber, I really don't even have TV, I just watch a lot of YouTube, the ads coming across that were pro Yes on 3 ads were basically just saying, hey, this opens up health care for women. That's it.
Yeah, but
nothing about abortion, nothing about the transgender side of things. It was just, hey, this is a pro-health care bill for women.
But I saw a billboard on 44 in Big Bend that said, "No on 3, oppose post-birth abortions." You and I both know.
Yeah, that's not. I agree with you there. Yeah,
So
that's common ground as well.
So again, if we strip out all of the add-ons, what it really came down to was, kind of to your friend's point, I don't want the government telling me what I can and can't do with my body.
Sure.
Women saying that in particular. And then the men that voted in favor were like, you know what? My wife, daughter, etc., they have the right to do what they want.
Yep.
So here's...
And I don't know, that kind of leads to the point, like, I know where I'm at. I'm as far right on this issue as you get, 100% pro-life. And that goes on.
So in that realm, you're saying the government should get involved and outlaw.
Yes. Yeah, because I believe that child has a right to life.
Does that
first...
child have the right to health insurance to stay alive?
It does not.
Yeah. Okay. Why? Why not?
So you have a given right from your creator, whether that's God or whatever you believe in, or just natural. You have a natural right to life. You deserve to live. You deserve to have a chance at life.
Whoa. Chance. That's the key word here. That seems awfully convenient to say. You don't have a right to life universally, but you have a right. You have a right to the chance of life, and then if you happen to achieve said life, then fuck you. Good luck. Because that's kind of, I mean,
to be blunt, that's you don't have a right to take from anyone else except those who are willing to give to you the opportunity to take care of you, such as your parents, obviously 99% of the time, or your guardian in general. So, but you don't have a right to steal from someone to provide for your life.
God forbid anybody in your household comes down with stage 4 cancer and needs treatment.
Yeah,
right?
We've discussed that on several occasions.
So, is it God's will to just let that run its course?
Yeah. I mean, it's our.
So how do you true that up? How do you true that?
It's our choice.
But how do you true that up as an elected official that is basically elected? The basic job of a politician that is put into office is to serve the people, to provide North Star, some safety rails, attempt to improve the lives in whatever means possible.
Well, I think that's where we would probably disagree. And maybe I disagree with society on this in general, maybe, but I don't think the government is put there to improve lives. The government is put there to protect our rights.
But you have in Perry County in particular, I believe the statistic is 11.5% poverty rate. Does those 11% of your footprint, they need help? Are you saying that it's not government's job to help them?
Correct. I think that is the community's job to help them. Churches, local leaders, not elected leaders, just local leaders in general. Unfortunately, we have dished on that responsibility to the government.
But what if they're agnostic? Why?
Well, it doesn't. You don't have to have. I generally feel like everybody is a good person at heart, and you don't have to have a God guiding you to want to do something good. Everybody is good inherently. Unfortunately, we make bad choices.
Except immigrants, right?
Well, no.
That's a national talking point.
It's a national talking point, but once again, that doesn't necessarily
give us you're tired, you're weak, you're weary.
I think that's
as long as
such a black and white
Anglo-Saxon.
I think a majority of people want to come here because they want to better their lives. Are there some bad that gets across the border? For sure, but punishing. But once again, this goes hand in hand with what you're talking about. Once they get here, I don't think the government should take care of those immigrants. So that's kind of my. That's always been one of my talking points in general on the having more of like an open Ellis Island style.
No, I understand it,
but I don't want to. I wanted to stick to state issues. if we can. But immigration is a part of it, especially in this past governor's race.
Well, okay. So simplistically speaking, though, I mentioned the five areas in which the state of Missouri, the Missourians, have voted in favor of what are arguably more liberal left of center policies by far.
Yep.
Trump won Missouri, I think, what was it, 57?
Yeah,
56, 44, somewhat 56, 42.
I thought he was in the 60s, but I could be wrong. I haven't looked at the numbers since like the night of, so I don't know.
Okay, so let's even say
Just say 60-40.
60-40. We have 8 reps in this state. Where, a couple of years ago, Nick and crew were arguing that the new maps should be drawn to a 7-1 map, which would be, 80% to the lesser, versus if we just look at the presidential race, that would be 60-40, which would be 5-3.
Well, back then it was more closer to 70.
No,
Yeah,
no, it was nowhere near close to 70.
I'm pretty sure it was 65-35.
I don't want to pull it up and say I know I'm right, but I know I'm right. It was nowhere close to 70.
All right, I don't agree, but I'll take your word.
But in addition to that, we also have, again, forget about the person. Let's talk about the policies. We just talked about 5 policy areas that are left-leaning policies that the state of Missouri, the people of Missouri, to the tune of an average of 55 to 57% pass these things. Okay, in totality, says this is the direction we want to go. Why? Explain the rationale in attempting to try and gerrymander our 8 representatives at the federal level to a 7-1 map.
I mean, I can't speak for Mr. Schroer. I don't know, but I mean, I see your argument for sure. Obviously, it's about representation, and that's an argument that you have to have. I mean. If you look at the map of Missouri and you see where the population hubs are at, you got one in Kansas City, you got one in St.
I understand,
Louis.
but I don't want to go down that path because at the end of the day, people vote, land doesn't. It's a cliche, but it's true. So when you have a population, the fact that you have space doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We can't even the breakdown of, well, look at the percentage of counties. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You still have humans that are putting their will out there in the form of votes, and we are, in essence, across the board, on average, a 55-45 state.
Yep. Well, can I just say this before we get too deep in the weeds? Because that pony show is over, right? So I can agree.
I'm only bringing it up in reference to the policy. Missourians, when given the opportunity to vote on policy directly, not via their quote representatives, they are more liberal than they are conservative.
Well, if you look at how many, the statistics are obviously against like conservative issues. So the conservative issues, you don't see initiative reforms being put on there, with an exception of like Amendment 7 this time around, which would be considered a conservative issue. I actually voted no against it. I don't want to, it's over now, so once again, I don't want to waste time on it. But, that was a constitutional amendment that was considered on the right side of things, and that was a 70-30 split. So, but the issue is...
Which one was 7?
It was the election reform constitutional amendment.
For the ranked choice and everything?
Yeah, banned ranked choice voting and unfortunately gave the government more power over primary voting. But I digress. But what I'm getting at is, we keep seeing these left-leaning initiatives being put onto the ballot, unfortunately all on constitutional amendments, and we don't see right-winged ones. So, when you're comparing it, I agree, yes, we continuously vote in favor of these left-leaning issues, but we also vote in favor of the right-leaning issues when we have those. So let's take Clean Missouri. So Clean Missouri, the first time around, had ethics law reform, and then it tried to reform the way that we drew redistricting here in Missouri. That got passed because it was campaigned as election ethics reform, and that's what everybody wanted to see. So then...
That's kind of funny, though.
Come time... Well, hold on.
Do you understand the irony?
Yes. So, but then when you turn it around, we had to pass Cleaner Missouri, We had to put a conservative or Republican-led initiative on the ballot to be able to basically pass to get rid of the map reform, the redistricting reform, to keep it basically at where it was before. And so, like, the people, once again, what I'm getting at that with my example there is that the people were campaigned for election law reform, but they got redistricting reform. And then when their eyes were open to what that was, they turned around and passed the redistricting reform to bring it back to its originality, to where it was at. So, like, it just goes hand in hand with what you were saying earlier, and what I've been preaching here is that the people just continuously the amount of millions and millions and millions of dollars they could put into like this Amendment 3 campaign, pro Amendment 3 campaign. It's a marketing ploy. It's a marketing tool.
Well, the women that have access to healthcare / abortion, et cetera, I don't think they view it as a marketing ploy. I think they view it as freedom.
Yeah, but you're talking like a small, if you're talking about voters in general, and what they went to the ballot box believing on August or November 5th, 6th, whatever, 4th, 5th, I think it was.
Well, let's jump into the deep end for just 2 seconds then.
Just real quick, look, if you look at the statistics of the disconnect of the amount of the percentages of Republicans that got elected compared to these left-leaning issues that got passed, there's a disconnect there. And that disconnect comes from the marketing of these campaigns.
I would call it local education.
I mean, sure. I guess you can call it that either way.
Because if you go into the Boot Heel or anywhere South Central, and everybody that lives in those areas, right? Where are they getting their data? Where are they getting their news?
Yeah.
It's all backyard stuff.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I just gave you the example earlier. Like, I'm an avid YouTube watcher. I, someone who leans very far to the right, continuously got these ads just talking about women's health care. It said nothing about abortion. Said nothing about transgender care. It said nothing along those lines. It was just about women's health care. If that's all I ever seen, and I went to the ballot box, because let's be honest, a majority of the people go to the ballot box not necessarily knowing anything, with an exception of they're voting for who they're voting for president and who they're voting for.
Do you find it ironic, though, that the No on 3 never mentioned contraception or the morning after or IVF?
This would not have what was going on was not preventing contraception.
At the end of the day, again, take all the pork and take all the extra lines out. What it did was allow
Missouri is more of a pro-life state than it isn't.
No, Missouri apparently is a pro-choice state.
You can't go off. I'm sorry, I won't agree that you can go off of this vote. It's you just can't.
Okay, so 70% was your guess. I had to pull it up. 2016, the Don got 56.7%. 2020, he got 56.8%.
Okay, my bad.
Not even
I thought
close.
It was 65. I don't know what numbers I was looking at then.
Well, I can tell you what numbers you weren't looking at, and I think it's a byproduct of the circles that we run in, right? Generically, we.
Yeah.
When you are running around in Jefferson within those groups and within pure Catholic conservative circles, et cetera, the artificial inflation of the threat, the fear, the reality is real. That is what just like when you come down into the city, you can go north of Del Mar and you can sit around and talk about how what percentage of Missourians outside of St. Louis County are racist. They're going to be like 100%. Well, it's not 100%. It's a big number, but it's not 100%, right? Everybody within their world is fed a narrative that feeds their bias, and that's where I'm going with this. When you take red and blue out and you put the black and white of the freedoms or choices or options or things that people want to do to their bodies, with their money or otherwise, you will typically see decisions being made that flow through to more of a libertarian / liberal landscape. Choice. Leave me alone. Let me do whatever I want to do, i.e. Amendment 3 is a byproduct of that. Because as much as everybody claims they're pro-life, when they walked in that ballot, everybody that you knocked on those doors and talk about abortion, they're going to be like, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-life. How many of those people do you definitively know that didn't walk into that ballot box and like, you know what, I'm actually pro-choice for my grandkids? If they happen to get raped or otherwise, or maybe they're putting in a situation in which they want that, I want to make sure they have the choice to do that. Is that not possible through your lens?
No, I mean, I think it's possible. I think it obviously happened but to a certain degree. I would not consider my friend who I brought up earlier as someone who considers himself pro-choice.
But he voted,
and he did vote for Amendment 3, and I couldn't. Of course, I'm not going to argue against him. Like, the vote was over at that point. It doesn't really matter. But I was very shocked at his choice there because of conversations that we've had in the past about being pro-life, and where we actually disagreed on was the exceptions, for instance. And so, like, we've had that conversation before, but then, he went ahead and voted in favor of Amendment 3. So, like, to me, that kind of, and there was a couple instances. I mean, I think you look at the statistics, and it just makes sense. And I'm not going to sit here and say it proves, because didn't do a scientific data analysis, but I think it makes a lot of sense that the people didn't really go into that ballot box knowing exactly what they were voting for Amendment 3.
I think a lot of people I would say a majority of people went in, if they would have known what all was in that bill, they would not have voted in favor of it. It would have been more the 65-35 swing. I don't think you're even close, with all due respect, because I think what it was is nobody really...
Well, why do you think they did? They did not promote the transgender issue side of that.
How many
bill.
Transgender athletes in high school or college are in the state of Missouri?
Couldn't tell you.
I can tell you it's probably less than 20.
You might be right.
And what's our population?
6 million?
6 million.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, so if we do the math, that's a non-issue. How many people?
I could agree with that. But
how many people in Missouri are unemployed / homeless? It's roughly 60,000 plus, versus less than 20. How many bills were put on our last ballot that addressed the homeless, or actually pointed to a policy that was going to reduce unemployment?
But the point of what I was getting at is that you're basically stating that the state of Missouri is far more progressive leaning than what we believe it to be, just because they voted in favor of Amendment 3, and I don't agree with that assessment.
But what about weed? So what about minimum wage increase?
I personally do not consider weed to be a liberal ideology to the extent of what it used to be. If we want to call it a progressive ideology, sure, but there are far less people now that are set on the war on drugs is what they used to be. That has changed. And then on top of that, when you have the schools out there promoting it, like a lot of ours did, and I'm sure they did up here as well, it's obviously going to bring people on board, because people don't necessarily care what they do in their own homes.
So when people though with felony convictions of possession, should they be expunged?
I personally would say yes. With drug offenses, nonviolent drug offenses for things that are legal now.
That's a deep progressive liberal tenet.
Oh, to me, I don't agree that people are doing time for something that is legal now. That's just that's obviously probably not where the Republican Party or where a lot of our other conservatives would land. But to me personally, like, if you want to ask my personal opinion, yes, I do believe that.
So here's where I'm...
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to transition to that, because I actually have a bill that I've pre-filed, can be considered criminal justice reform, and I think it's going to be a bipartisan issue if we can get enough support and get it across the line. Is actually nonviolent drug offenders that are getting out will have access to SNAP benefits. They currently do not. So if you go to jail for domestic violence or pedophilia or even second-degree manslaughter, from my understanding, and you get out, you have access to SNAP benefits, to help get you on your path. Unfortunately, right now in Missouri state statute, drug offenders do not. So as basically this bill that I've pre-filed would allow those drug offenders who have done their time getting back out here on the streets would have that assistance to help get them forward. And, you're going to probably call me out on my irony of what I said earlier, but to me, this is more of a government being fair. And if it's going to be in this service, it needs to be fair.
Well, I think
all lines there.
So we are in complete agreement, because I do believe that left to our own devices, the private market is at times nefarious. and cruel, to be honest. What is it? Marcus Aurelius. This is one of the few quotes that I remember. Poverty is the mother of all crime, right? And I think that the bill that you're talking about actually addresses that. Like you can't continue to keep somebody poor and struggling and not expect them to go get what they need. Right? So I think that I'm going to go back to just really kind of summarizing what we were just talking about as far as my perception of Missouri as it pertains to the split between elected officials and the actual policies that we vote for. I agree with you. I think the issue is in the messaging. I think the issue is in the education. I think the issue is in the private funding of these messages. And I would argue that the red wave over the past 20 years, supermajority that we've been living underneath, this is a self-inflicted wound by the Republican Party because they have created boogeymen in the form of the Second Amendment and just quote freedom or woke or whatever key hot words we want to talk about. And when you take out that narrative and you just put down on a ballot, do you believe women should have the right to abortion, right? Do you believe weed should be legal? Do you believe minimum wage should be increased, et cetera? Everybody says yes. They're not reading the details. They're not getting in the weeds of everything else that's intended to scare somebody into being anti-trans or homophobe or whatever. They literally are like, I want to be left alone. I want to make more money, and I don't want to go to prison if I've got a joint in my pocket. Right. So, is the issue really the language and the spend on the initiatives, or is it a long-running campaign via Rush et al. To make anybody that is from a blue area a demon?
Well, I think there's a way to bridge this gap, and it leads to IP reform, which or initiative petition reform, which I think is also being mislabeled to an extent. So if we are to pass initiative petition reform, we will not be taking the rights away from the people to be able to legislate, essentially. Essentially what you're doing is you are going to be making it harder to amend the Constitution. So for me, and I would agree a majority of people would understand that our Missouri Constitution, along with our U.S. Constitution, is solely there to be a framework of the walls that our government is supposed to stay within, not to be a statute book.
Okay, devil's advocate here. When the people are actually given the opportunity to make changes based on their majority opinion, they say otherwise. Are you saying that the minority is more justified?
No, I am saying that it should not be so easy to amend the Constitution. No one is trying to take the majority of people's vote, or really the people in general. No one is trying to take away their vote to legislate. But I think it's extremely irresponsible to continue to fulfill our super thick, over 300-page Constitution that is only supposed to be there to tell our government what it can and can't do.
Quick break. We're going to come right back to that. Quick break. All right, we're back. We're going to try this again. We're going to wrap this up because we could make this another 2 hours. What I was just saying a second ago was talking about defining colors, labels. You had mentioned Trump's version of Republican / MAGA is really, you consider yourself a little bit different. You consider yourself more of a Ron Paul, Reagan, et cetera. As you mentioned, as I agreed, I said that doesn't exist anymore. How do you view the party right now? Like, how do you define? Because we live in a binary world. It's Democrat versus Republican simplistically as it pertains to ballots. But I would argue that both parties are completely bifurcated, if not more. Where's the Republican Party today, in your view, as a rural Republican elected, free market, pseudo-libertarian, get government out of everything guy? How do you view it?
Gosh, that's tough. And the reason I say that is specifically like some.
Pull that a little closer if
yeah,
you don't
I'm
mind.
sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's tough because as someone who pushed or got some blowback for being too kind of like anti-government, if you will, and I received that libertarian label, and unfortunately, like I don't subscribe to it. You talk about it being black and white, right? Like to me, the Republican Party is a big tent party. The Democrat Party is a big tent party. Once you start getting to those third parties, like your Green Party or your Libertarian Party, they became a little bit more niche. They're not as big tent. You may have like small tent, more progressive on each line, but they're to me, from the inception of the Republican Party and probably the Democrat Party included, there's just been a tent. You have a scale.
But don't you think that's a byproduct of our system, though?
Yeah, I do agree. It is a byproduct. But the problem is, unfortunately, that a lot, I would say today, in today's Republican Party, they don't really see it as that anymore.
Now, you do know that ranked choice voting is literally structured to dismantle the, quote, two big tents only. That's how it works.
Sure.
It actually creates the opportunity of more of a coalition government.
Yeah. So,
and we digress.
Yeah, exactly. I can't disagree there. And I'm not one that's an expert on election laws, and it's hard for me to endorse or be anti ranked choice voting. That's actually not the reason why I said earlier I voted no against Amendment 7. The reason I voted no against Amendment 7 was because it had the literal word primary voting in the language that's now going to be put into our Constitution. That was not in there before. So the only thing that our Constitution stated about elections was it gave the oversight authority to the Secretary of State, and then it gave the authority to the legislature to regulate.
Well,
outside of that, there was no constitutional verbiage that stated anything about primaries.
Well,
now there is.
Let's avoid the constitutional weeds for a little bit. I want to get back to just simplistically define a Republican.
See, to me, it would be someone who believes in founding principles, someone who believes in freedom and capitalism, and those are kind of the. If you look at the Republican platform, it's very, I would say, it's very Reaganite, essentially. It's
well, but in fairness, I mean, I think you know me well enough to know, like, I read a lot.
Right.
During the election, I was constantly refreshing both candidates' quote platform pages.
No, I'm talking about the state Republican Party. I'm not talking about Donald Trump's platform.
Well, Missouri state Republican platform is, I mean, if you drew a Venn diagram, it'd look like a circle.
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. I mean, it's anti-income tax, it's anti-property tax, it's it's anti-regulation. To me, it's solid. It's very good. And that's what I ran on. And this is where it gets really frustrating for me. You hear the rhino term get tossed around just so much.
So dumb.
It's so funny because you have people that are a little bit more progressive and you have people that are a little bit more conservative talking about in that Republican tent that are all being called rhinos. So, I've never prescribed to that word. I don't use it. And similar to where I've started.
Don't you see it as lazy? Like when you hear, we're not going to name names, but the reality is there are individuals that are in the house with you that use it ad nauseum. And it's lazy to me. Like to your point, what even is a rhino?
Well, what's funny is I hear it from both sides. And obviously, if any of your voters don't know, rhino, Republican in name only, right?
Well, Democrats miss rhinos. if
sure.
That is like, oh my God, you mean that you actually balance ideology? Cool. Yeah, let's talk.
So, and it stems from basically Democrats infiltrating the Republican Party. So what has happened here in Missouri since once again, I'm not subscribing to this one way or the other. I'm just explaining to you my understanding. So
it's a billboard theory.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what has happened is after the Democrat Party lost its majority here in Missouri, obviously at that point, you have to run as a Republican to win in more rural areas than anything. So, but the policies of that candidate may have not have changed. They just changed their name. Or changed their party, excuse me. They changed what is in front of their name. And so that has led to more progressive policies being passed, or I won't say progressive, more moderate policies being passed rather than your more conservative side of things, which is, when you have 111 reps out of 163, which is a super majority, you would imagine we'd be following our Republican platform, and we just don't. Granted, it's not black and white. You have to have plans to be able to phase things out, and that's weeds, of course, but
they're just not that good at governing. Like, let's call a spade a spade. Like the 111 that have this supermajority.
Well, I would argue it wouldn't matter if it was Democrats or Republican. Neither one of them.
But they have no barrier to policy. They've got every level of the state, including the federal support from the 2 senators and 6 of the 8 representatives. So why do they keep shit in the bed?
Well, unfortunately, it all stems back to kind of like the education of I guess I'll put it like this. As long as you're not voting against babies, God, and guns, then you can essentially do what you want. And this is where I really have been opening the eyes of people around here. In Missouri, where everything is really broken, is at the structure of our legislature and the power, like the hierarchy of power that there is. So,
isn't it really the people that are elected to those positions? Because
yes.
Because any institution is only a form, but it's representative of its people.
But how do they get elected to those positions? Well, they do have to get elected by their people.
Well, they have no competition.
But in a lot of instances, you're right. There is no competition. They're able to walk right in, which is why I got involved in the first place, because I seen, back in 2018, my rep just walked right in literally with no competition, and then go and in my opinion, vote the way that we as a county did not believe in. Of course, that's one man's opinion. But, they have to get elected, and then they're elected by their peers. Well, how do they, talking about leadership, the Speaker of the House, your floor leader, your pro tem, and people that really affect your policy. And the reason they can affect that policy is because they pick the chairs of the committees. They pick the committees. They pick what legislation goes to what committee.
Yeah,
it's and by the way, it's like this at the federal level too. Of course, actually, probably even sleazier. And
the federal level has a little bit more guardrails because number one, C-SPAN exists, and number two, you do have way more money and power in the opposition parties either way.
It's closer, right?
Keep it because the reality is,
if
you do not have competition, you have no transparency. That is the problem in my summary statement here. The problem with Missouri is once you take the 3 districts out, St. Louis, Columbia, and Kansas City, you take them out. The issue with the rest of the state is you have no transparency because you don't have any competition. If there are not Democrats with some form of funding or some form of left or right of left of center individuals that are like questioning the hypocrisy of billboard statements that they run on, they're going to take all your guns. No Democrat in the state of Missouri that has any power, sway, elected position, et cetera, has ever said we want to take all guns. Right? And when you don't have that pushback within these rural marketplaces, i.e. the county that you come from, and I'm not saying that you're one of those guys that are like feeding, crazy narratives. If you are, I'll be sure to text you. But the point is we don't have real conversations. We don't have factual dissections of theory or belief. We just don't, because it's all bubble. And the bias bubble within rural Missouri is this red Superdome made of Valerian steel, and it just perpetuates God, life, and guns, right? When at the end of the day, if I was able to go down there, raise some money, and run in any one of those districts and say, look, here's the deal. I don't give a shit who you believe in. I don't care how many guns you have. Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to make sure that we get as many of your federal tax dollars back here. Oh, by the way, they're not your federal tax dollars. They're California's federal tax dollars, and they're the city of St. Louis's federal tax dollars. I'm going to bring those all back, and I'm going to look to make sure that if we have 20,000 people, I want 10% a year, 22,000 people, year one, new employees, new residents, new houses. We're going to come up with a plan, and we're going to make this a better community, period. Nobody down there is saying that. Why? Why do you think that is? Because if I'm that $31,000 median household that has no life insurance, no health insurance, barely paying my car insurance, and I've got a 10-year used car, and my kids have no choice, this whole school choice thing, right? There's only a public school. There's no private school anywhere near where my kids are. What do I want? I don't care that your gun locker is full and protected by the federal government or the state government. I care that I can get a better job. And nobody talks about that in rural Missouri. And I'm trying to understand why.
Well, because just to your average person, it doesn't matter. Like what really matters is, the freedom of choice to be able to do what they want. In our area specifically, that's why I moved out that's why I even moved out of the municipality. So I was able to have whatever animals that I wanted, essentially.
Alpacas?
That would be great. We don't have any yet. It's on the list. Just chickens, not having a cap on chickens, something as simple as that. But anyways, people, all they want in the more rural areas is to be left alone. And
do they, or do they want more financial stability? Do they want more services? Do they want more grocery stores? Do they want more hospital access? Do they want cheaper insurance? Do they want, a nicer car?
Well, what they see is when they come to the more democratic areas, that all of that is more expensive. The access to that is really far and few between, because we still have all those things, just to a lesser extent in our area.
Yeah, but for example, if you go from a $25,000 car to a $40,000 car in the quote more expensive area, but you have a median income that goes from $31,000 to $110, guess what? You win.
I mean, to an extent, some people, obviously it's more than just black and white on paper. You have the way of living, the way of life down south, and
better schools, more hospital options, more grocery stores.
I mean, you say better schools, but our schools perform extremely well. We also have plenty of private options as well, at least in my local area, which we're blessed to have. And we have a very good homeschooling, vibrant community as well. So, we have those options. Do we have a car dealership? We do not. Not any. But we do, but we don't.
But you even talked about you're 10 miles in either direction to the next gas station or convenience store.
Yeah, in the one city, St. Mary. Yeah,
10 miles, a 10-mile radius of my location right here. There's probably 15 quick trips and a countless number of other.
Yeah.
That's option. That's to a degree, quote, privilege, right? Because mileage matters. Gas costs based on how much you use. We're kind of on a hamster wheel here. My point is, my frustration with the state of Missouri is simply the bias bubble. And I think that the narratives that are being touted by individuals, and I'm going to say his name, Nick Schroer, I follow him, I troll him, because I don't respect his approach.
But can we at least agree that Democrats do the same thing?
Who? I do agree, but name a name.
Well, easily Crystal Quaid was very much your governor candidate, very much on that in her entire tenure in the House.
Wait.
Peter Meredith in the House.
Peter Meredith is one of the smartest dudes.
Oh, I don't disagree. I'm thankful he's turned out, because I would not have wanted to be on the House floor with that guy. He shred me to pieces.
Yeah, Chris. So, but give me specifics. Just because they are Democrat and because they were fighting for policies that were opposite of your policies, give me an example of the policy in which they were dangerous and false narrative peddlers.
Do you want me to take the time to pull up their Twitter, or specifically Crystal Quaid's?
I follow them both. I read it. Nothing on there. I'm the first one to call out the crew. Cori Bush. Cori Bush got primaried.
Yeah, and lost. Yeah.
Because that's not what real moderate/Democrats believe in, period. And here's the biggest difference. I say this at the national level, and I will apply it to the state level. The Republican Party nationally, when you look at who is in leadership, the crazy, the nutbags are the ones that are in the front row of the Republican Party, from Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we can go on and on and on. Right?
I don't know about that.
Sure.
Why is Mike Johnson, I would argue, is a super moderate?
Really?
Yes.
Mike Johnson believes women should be at home not working, period.
He's
on record of saying
he may be an old school conservative, but in regards to how he governs and how his voting record.
But it doesn't matter.
His voting record is not conservative. His voting record is very moderate.
But individuals' character, moral, and beliefs dictate how they believe policies should be implemented. So when you have an individual like Mike Johnson that believes women should not be working and or they should be pumping out more babies, they're not putting out enough babies, and he believes that the history books should be replaced 1 hour a day with the Bible in public schools, that is not representative of America. That is actually
Might be representative of his district.
no way it's 100%. No way it's 75%.
But at least the majority. You talk about the majority having a voice, right? So,
But Republicans nationally, again, they put Matt Gaetz's of the world, right? And guess what? Now he's gone. Now he's going to go make money on OAN, all that stuff. The Democratic Party, as much as everybody wants to make the squad out to be the headline losers, let's be clear. The majority of the squad, a third of them got primaried. The Democratic Party is saying, nope, that's too extreme. We want you out. The Democratic Party also has an extreme issue in messaging. They are awful at competing in federal elections. Now, that being said, 7 battleground states, Trump won all of them. 6 of those 7, though, Democrats won all the positions down ballot. You take North Carolina, the governorship, the state, senates, Michigan, Wisconsin, New Mexico, Arizona, all Democratic senators. So again, to your point earlier, like, how does it make sense that, don't you think that there's something wrong with all these liberal policies being passed, yet we elect all these Republican representatives? The issue is in the narrative. Well, kind of the same thing at the national level. Yeah, Trump won those states, but it was by far a Democratic sweep when it came to all the other elected positions. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So here's my point. And then we're going to wrap this up because we're going to set this up for a part 2. I think the issue is when areas, St. Louis City, I will say that St. Louis City politics are absolutely no different than rural Missouri, fundamentally speaking. And that's because they are both in a biased bubble. And when you do not have viable messages or messengers that are integrated into the conversation and or at least respected and given airtime, you expand the bias. That's why St. Louis, and miraculously, again, Cory Bush lost. So the idea that the progressive left crazy wing is running the party is just simply patently false. The Republicans can't say the same. You look at these cabinet nominations, et cetera. I mean, look, how many of them have been just simply charged or accused of sexual assault, et cetera? I mean, it's like these things that from a moral perspective, you talk about Mike Johnson being a good, God-fearing, moral individual. What's his thoughts on adultery?
I never said that.
No. I'm paraphrasing. Sorry. I'm not going to put words in your mouth there. The hypocrisy is crazy, but I believe that the hypocrisy grows within these bubbles. And Missouri has a problem. It has a bubble from a rural perspective because the actual policies that would affect these individuals' day in, day out lives and still allow them the right to carry, have their guns and not have an abortion if they don't want to have an abortion, all those things would exist. But their quality of lives are being stifled by an ideology that is scaring them into protecting things that they already have protection for.
Yep. I think that sums it up to an extent of where that is politics in general. And I know you keep swinging it. I'm just not a good promoter because of this side of the political realm. I personally just don't really care about because I think everything is broken. I think everything sucks. So I'm just not the best. Probably not the best communicator to debate you on some of these issues, but everything that I hear you say about the Republican Party, I just hear come from the Democrat Party as well.
I'm not giving anybody a pass.
And so there's the narrative, in mainstream media or amongst these elected servants, as I call them, at all levels of government. That's their game. That's the game. That's how they make money. That's how, and I don't mean like politicians in general making money. I just mean how the industry of government continues to fund itself. It's just this big circle of narrative, which gives lobbyists power to do this and speak about this, and for fundraising efforts, which then in turns in fundraising efforts for representatives and Congress people, and then it turns into legislation, and just the big circle that we run into here is just a big old pile of crap.
So let's close with it. Let me just ask you a really simple question. If you believe things are broke, do you believe that change is the agent to fix it, or is it, because Missouri in particular, it's super majority red.
Yep.
It's been led by
when
Republicans.
I say change, I think the change that we need needs to come. It needs to pull power. It needs to decentralize the power of the speaker, and it needs to decentralize the power of the executive branch in general. Because, and I didn't even get into this. I know that we could do this maybe on the next episode, but just the general outlook of how I feel that specifically our legislature works is that our representatives and our senators do not work for the people.
No,
they do not. And that even more so at the federal side of things, but to stay at the local level. Because if I'm, as I alluded to earlier, as long as I don't vote wrong on like the major issues, in theory, I could pretty much do whatever I want. And as long as that voting comes with good checks coming from the right people, and then I'm donating to the right people, such as the party, like HRCC and things along those lines, then I'm going to be fine, statistically speaking. Now, could someone primary and potentially beat me? Yeah, but the stats behind that are so slim. If I have the right people in my pocket, or at least backing me, if you will.
So we're in agreement that competition is a good thing, and rural Missouri needs more blue bodies down there to at least keep people on their toes.
I don't disagree. Whether it's blue bodies, whether it's Republican, third party, whatever, it doesn't matter. I do think competition is a good thing, and I've said this after I won. I was like, someone would I prefer if no one ran against me? Of course, but I don't think that's justice to our people, because I know for a fact that there's going to be some sort of group demographic in my district that I don't represent. I didn't have a Democratic opponent. Yeah. So I got to I won my primary, which was a tough primary battle, and get into that in the future or whatever. And after we won, essentially I got to campaign on Amendment 3 because I didn't have any competition. And so, competition is good. Yes, I do agree with that. And I would never shy away from the competition, even being an elected servant now at this point.
Closing question. Define a victory. Define a win or winning for your district. What does that look like?
A win for my district?
Just like if you were to say, you know what, my district is winning, and here's why. How would you define that?
Well, right now, our district. It's hard because I have Perryville is in Perry County is substantially high, right? Like on a high. Like they're doing great. Their retail is doing really well. They've just continued to grow. The Southeast Missouri region is growing, and Perryville has been a beneficiary from that. Excuse me. St. Genevieve, on the other hand, has been stagnant in growth, and there's been some legislation that has really specifically targeted some corporations. With some exemptions. Once again, we go back to government picking winners and losers. That gives these corporations exemptions from certain sales tax on tangible property and things along those lines that us as people don't have that exemption for. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's all in the namesake of economic development. But the problem is it's just pulled over 2% or 10%, of our local budget. So now we're having to do things and probably if we don't change this at the state level and revert it back, then we're going to have to go to the people for more tax money or for a sales tax increase or whatnot. And so in regards to how is my district winning, I would say that I'm very humbled and proud that to be able to be chosen and selected by my district. I think where I would excel over others is am I going to go in and just kind of be a squishy Republican and just do whatever leadership says? I do not, or I will not. I'm going to go in and I'm going to call it out as I see it, just like I did here today. I've been on other podcasts calling out the party. Because
I don't want to troll you too.
I appreciate that. And to summarize, to an extent, that could have some backlash, if leadership doesn't like me. And once again, it falls on how Jefferson City is broken and I'm having to walk on eggshells. Well, if I decide to go ahead and break those eggshells, then, maybe legislation that could help our district doesn't get passed. So that's something that I don't think it's a position that we as representatives should be put into, but unfortunately we are because of the hierarchy of the House of Representatives in here in Missouri, and well, of course, more at the federal level, as I had said. So to me, I feel like where I excel at will be trying to peel back government regulations and try to open up and educate our my constituency to what is really going on in Jefferson City, and we talk about the transparency. That's a big goal for me. So hopefully that's a big win for our
It's a
district.
little dangerous because you'd be a whistleblower within your own party.
Yeah, that's fine.
I love it. I'll support that. You need help? I'll help you.
I appreciate that.
Brian, thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite and the opportunity. And
Did you have fun?
oh,
You gonna tell your friends
as you
about
said,
this?
man, we would. I could be here all night. So we're obviously way longer than I ever imagined, and I could still keep up. We didn't even scratch the surface about legislation that I have coming up, which I would love to hear your input on. And
Yeah, I want to hear the metal knuckles one someday.
oh, did you look that up? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I gotta admit, felt weird, but we'll talk about that next
Absolutely.
time. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah,
Best
appreciate
of luck with the BMWs and the fourth one on the way.
Thank you very much, JB. I appreciate it.
Cheers, buddy. Take care.
See ya.